So this video, of course, comes from Anton Daniels. It says here, can't talk to a younger woman if you're an older man. Let's get into this. Shout out to Anton Daniels. He usually does good content and reviews good content as well too. Let's see what this conversation is about.
Let's talk about age gaps in dating, you guys. We've seen a lot of situations. I gotta take my glasses off. Y'all gotta get serious. We've seen a lot of situations, you know what I'm saying, with the age gaps with the men and the women. You know what I'm saying? How do we feel about that? Is it possible, do you think someone that's older than you can watch you grow up and genuinely be interested in a relationship and not in a predatory way? So could you date somebody that's 15 years older than you and that's genuinely just with you for you and not predatory? Cuddy.
I think it has to do with the actual range, right? Like when you're 30 you with somebody that's 45, that's different.
Okay.
But if you're 25 with somebody, you know, who's 15 or less or 7, you know, like, then it gets a little, like, I don't want it.
That's when the water get muddy.
Yeah, because intellectually, mentally, like, as an adult, you know how impressionable you are at that age, how naive, how, you
gullible.
know. Yeah, all
Right.
that, you know. So I just really feel like, how do you truly have a connection with somebody who is so immature and underdeveloped? So I kind of feel like sometimes it's predatory, but also people want to groom, and you know, they feel like it's a good thing. Like, oh, I can lead them in the right direction. You know, like I can raise them and train them in a way that's best suitable for me. But a lot of the time, that's a manipulative way because it's what you want them to do for your own personal benefit.
Right.
Let me give you
Let's pause there. Let's pause there real quick. So the question here basically is asking, of course, well, how old is too old, right? And she brought up a good point. If I'm 30 years old, if I'm a 45-year-old man and I'm talking to a 30-year-old woman, I think that's cool, right? That's cool because both parties are of sound mind, right? Of sound mind, of sound body. I think both parties are emotionally mature. Both parties are physically mature, whatever the case is. So there's no harm or foul in that, right? But it's different if I'm 30 years old and I'm talking to a 17-year-old girl. First of all, that's illegal here in a lot of states. Whatever the case is, that's illegal. And just the mental capacity of that person that's going to be 16, 17, 18 to my 30, 35 years old is going to be, the disparity between those two is going to be too large, right? So I do agree. I think the age gap is not a thing when it comes to the mental wherewithal of the person, right? Of both parties, right? It starts to become predatory when it's, people can say that it's predatory and manipulative when the mental capacity of either partner is not all the way there. Of course, this is meant more so speaking, of course, men and women, but let's not act as if older women have not taken advantage of younger men as well, too. It happens. It does happen. Of course, some people think it's not as common, but it does happen. So when it comes to the age gap, right? For me personally, I'll speak personally for me. Traditionally speaking, when it comes to relationships, I feel like there's a lot of circumstances where, you have, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, whatever the case is, there was a huge gap between both parties, right? And it worked. And, and that was the generation that was able to build a family, build themselves up financially, whatever the case is, and it worked, right? In the common times now, it's not as common. I think like now, of course, now as I've grown and I've matured, I would say now, and it's so funny because I thought this to myself the other day, like now at 35, again, speaking personally for me as well too, I'm gonna put that out there as well too. Like I like older women. I've never been with an older woman. I've never dated an older woman, romantically, of course, whatever the case is. But I like older women. So I think for me, the oldest I would speak to, honestly, is like probably 45. And it's so funny because I have an older sister. Me and my sister are 8 years apart, whatever the case is. So my sister's 42? 42 will be 43 in September, whatever the case is. So it's like, yeah, I would talk to somebody in her age range, like 100%. Like I like older women. I think older women, and I always said this as well too. Like, yeah, it'll be interesting to, and again, this goes back to what I was saying about mental capacity, right? So I think the fascination that I have with older women is to be able to keep up just mentally. Let's not even talk physically, whatever the case is, this and the other. But I think it's cool to be able to intellectually be able to keep up with a woman that's older, right? So if I go to a dinner with a woman that's 45 and me and her can have a conversation and keep up and she's just as mentally stimulated as she might be physically, whatever the case is, I think that's cool. That feels good to me, right? I don't know if that's ego, whatever the case is, but yeah, I would, pat myself on the back if I could keep up, right? Keep up with a 45-year-old woman. to not get bored, because on the reverse of that, let's say if a 45-year-old woman is talking to a 23-year-old, you're probably going to wonder if he could keep up in a conversation. A lot of the times you're hearing this younger generation behind us struggle with even social skills and being able to hold a decent conversation, right? So it's just like, yeah. So it's just like, for me personally, at 35, I feel like if I could mentally engage, right? Just mentally, speaking mentally, if I can mentally engage and mentally stimulate a 45-year-old woman, I think that's pretty cool. Like, she's not bored. Like, oh, wow, she's actually listening to what I'm saying, takes what I'm saying into consideration, and she's, actually wanting to engage in conversation, and that's cool. I think that's pretty cool. Again, going back to what she was saying as well, too, because the mental capacity is there, right? The mental capacity is there. On the reverse of that, I think there is an age gap where it does fall into, this is just predatory, right? It's just predatory. It's just like, this is not normal. I feel like, and I think that's what she was getting into as well too. Now I'll play a little bit more of that as well. Well, she kind of spoke on it already, but I wanted to see what her next question was following up to that. But I'll say this as well too. There's a part where, I guess the original question was, can there be, is there a level of the man and woman dynamic? Let's speak men and women, the older man to a younger woman, right? Let's keep it there. Is there an element where you can speak to a younger woman? So let's say, for example, there's a 30-year-old man and he's interested in talking to a high schooler, right? An 18-year-old girl. So it's consensual, right? So an 18-year-old girl, 19-year-old girl, whatever the case is. Is it possible for that man to speak to that girl, let's say 19, so it's legal, right? So let's just say 19, so it's legal. Is it possible for that man to speak to that girl and it not be predatory and it not be manipulative? Whereas he's not speaking to her to like brainwash her and, make her fold to his demands or whatever the case is, and kind of mold her to his own ideas of what life is and how relationships should work as, right? Is it possible for it to be platonic and genuine as to like, yeah, I know you're younger than me and I'm going to help you develop and grow and I'm going to help you build so you don't have to make them same mistakes. Is there a way to do that and it's not predatory? Honestly, to be honest, in my personal opinion, it depends on the intention. It depends on the intention. Like, if there's a good-hearted man out there that, it's like, I don't want nothing I don't want to take advantage of you. I'm not here to manipulate you. I can guide you, I can, I think sometimes it is, and that's just kind of where the world is right now. It would be a harder pitch to sell, especially to her family, whatever the case is. Of course, if she's somebody that has a family, a mom and dad that's in her life, whatever the case is, no mom is going to tell her, hell no, my daughter's not talking to a 30-year-old man. She's 18, she's 19, she's not talking to a 30-year-old man, whatever the case is. But let's say, for example, right, the man did have pure intention and, he is of that tradition where I want to have a younger wife, whatever the case is, so she could, I could, help her avoid the mistakes that any young woman would go through, whatever the case is. It's not as common. It's not common, but I think, again, if the intention is pure in a perfect world, we don't live in a perfect world, so it doesn't seem realistic, but if the intention is pure, I think it could work, again, because, and I'm only saying that, don't run with this, I think it could work because, again, if we want to go back to our older generations where in some situations, some people even be watching this, your grandma and your grandpa or their parents might be, there might be a difference of 10 years between them. I know some people right now that their parents or their grandparents got 10 years apart from them, 10, 12 years apart from them. You see what I'm saying? So it's not like it doesn't work, but what's the intention? I think the intention is what makes it the most important, is what I'm saying. Let's watch a little bit more of this. It's an interesting conversation. I'm going to see where her next question was. Let's see what she says.
Some people might be at that age mentally still, right?
Who, the older person?
The older person. That older person might still be 25 in their head, going to the club every weekend, only prioritizing their friends a little bit,
like that's not
and
healthy.
Things like that.
Yeah, that ain't no
right.
That's
so
unhealthy.
That's not an excuse.
That's toxic.
That's still unhealthy.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
For you
then.
to be that grown and still acting that young in age is a problem within itself.
Right.
Okay.
But it's just like, I feel like everybody always talking about men doing it versus women. I agree 100% with what she said. It's about the range. When you 30, you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You about life, you've been living life on your own for a while. You figuring it out. I feel like when somebody is in their early 20s, I'm gonna say probably 20 to 27. Mm-hmm. I feel like nobody in their late 30s, 40s got no business dealing with that age range because the immature, it's so much of a difference.
Let them start figuring out life.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're in your 20s, I actually fell victim to this when I was 24,
we should be living.
Right? When I was 24, I fell victim to this, and I dated this guy who was 15 years older than me, and literally kind of changed the whole world. It was disgusting. At that time, I was really focused on being an artist. I was like one of the popular club promoters, and he was so intimidated by the path that I was on. It was really weird because it's like I met him in the club, but he was so intimidated by the path that I was on and by the attention that I got and stuff like that. He was like, no, let me cage this bird. And I feel like a lot of the times with older men, when they're attracted to younger women, they try to get them to dim that light that attracted them to begin with. Cuddy, is that your experience too?
No.
Or can you identify with that?
I have experienced that like a little bit, but I've also experienced somebody who lied to me about their age. I always say, like, once you lie about your age, you're a pedophile.
Facts.
Because there is no way that you should be telling people that you're younger than you.
You should be embarrassed of your
Facts.
age.
And
Let's pause right there. If I gotta lie about my age, that goes back to the intention. If I gotta lie about my age for us to work, then that's pedophilia behavior, 100%. So if I'm perfect example, I'll speak to myself real quick. Of course, I think I look my age now, or maybe I still look fairly young, but all my life I was always looked super young. Like I always, and that runs in my family. We've always, all my family members for the most part, especially on my dad's side, we all look 10 years younger than what we all actually are. So if you see anybody in my family right now, it's, you know, I think even almost on both sides, I feel like my mom and my dad's side, but especially on my dad's side, if you see them right now, just whatever age you think they are, just go ahead and add 10 because everybody looks fairly young. So if I'm somebody right now, let's say I'm 30, but I can pass for 20, if I gotta lie and tell you, hey man, yeah, what's your name, sweetheart? Yeah, I'm only 25, and she's 25 with the case, I gotta tell her, that's a problem. That goes back to the intention. That's predatory. That's when it's manipulative. That's the first red flag. So situations like that, that's a problem, you know, and I feel like that's pretty common in our current, you know, civilization as well, too, in our current culture. If once I have to lie about my age for you to feel comfortable to be able to continue the conversation with me, my intentions can't be pure. It can't be. Now, I know there'll be some people that will rebuttal and be like, nah, I had to lie first to get comfortable with you, but I was going to tell you. Some people, I know there's some fools out there that will try to rationalize them lying to be able to say like, nah, I lied first so you could be comfortable, and then I was going to tell you eventually that, nah, I'm actually 10 years older than you as opposed to just 5 or whatever the case is. I feel like but that doesn't make it right, you know? So I do feel like, yeah, that kind of falls in that category as well, too, in terms of the intention. The second you have to lie about your age in order for somebody to feel comfortable with you to move forward and continue to date you and court you, your intentions are already negative. You already have ill intentions for me or that person already. I agree, 100%. Let's keep watching this. Interesting conversation.
He didn't have any facial hair or anything. That's why, like, I do not deal with guys without facial hair. I'll be like,
yeah, they scare me anyway.
I don't know what you're trying to do. Like, I'm talking about nothing.
Give me that smooth ass head.
I was in my teens, and he told me that he was like 21, 22, and then he went to jail, and I looked him up, and he was 27.
Oh,
and I was
he
like,
said he's how old?
I'm 21, 22.
Oh, he is a creep.
Yeah.
What do a man get out of that?
He's a creep.
Trying to mess with somebody
because they be embarrassed that you know you're too grown to be dealing with her.
No matter, we stopped dealing with each other, but as time went on, the girl still stayed my age, even though he got older.
Yeah.
That was
and
his
then
type.
now he's in jail for like 168 years.
God.
Damn.
Set like rape and child pornography and all of that stuff. And I didn't even know.
Wow.
Plot twist.
That
like
is
a
crazy.
month.
So
168
Randy,
years.
I wanted to say, so let me flip it though. I'm agreeing with you now. As I'm getting older, I'm seeing it that way. But the 22-year-old me, I was dating somebody 44.
Of course.
Literally 20 years older than me.
Yo, Shorty just said she was 22 dating a 44-year-old, bro. And ladies, y'all be doing that. Ladies do that. Y'all do that. Okay. Okay, you know, she's older now. Of course, I'm not judging her whatever the case is. So she's getting ready to explain whatever the case is. But imagine being 22 years old talking to a 44-year-old man. What? Let me let her finish. Let me see what she's about to say, because that's crazy.
But me at 22, some people argue when you're young, you want to be outside, you should be living.
Mm-hmm.
I was like thriving with my hair. I had my condo early. I didn't want to be doing what most 22-year-old girls was doing.
Yeah.
I had no place in the club. I would go out, feel awkward, wasting money. So I naturally was gravitating to a guy who would get with me and be like, you know, what some people would say was doing grown men stuff, but I had no place
and the fun stuff with the 22-year-olds was doing.
So you felt like at that time, because sit back, let me talk to her real quick.
lean back.
Because what happens is that 21, when you hit that 21, 22, you start smelling yourself and you think you grown.
Yeah.
You thought you had no place in them clubs because you was too grown for this.
Yeah.
No, that nigga
It
was
was
too
no fun.
That nigga was too grown for you.
Yeah.
Now it's ways to hang out and still be young and fun without it just being club shit.
Right,
You know what
yeah.
I'm saying? We can get the beach, we can hit the mall with the friends, we can have girls' night inside.
Yeah.
Them old niggas be preying on us and they know what they be doing. You thought it was your idea, right? Like, oh no, this is beneath me. You
Yeah.
still thought it was your idea when you
No,
just
listen,
said
you
But
ain't
let me say,
it was
she is not
here.
lying.
You're right, because
They will
today
in your
me,
head.
if I had a daughter that was 22 today me, I would
Yeah.
be like, why are you interested in this 40-year-old man and why is he interested in you? And I would try to, like my mom was doing. But
Yeah.
for me, it was like I was hanging with the guys who was 22 through 25 and I would just be like,
Yeah.
These
Y'all
niggas smell
can't
like
do
me.
nothing for it.
like, what are we talking about on this date?
Is this really how
Ain't
you
it
think
crazy
it's?
how this be the main conversation about men preying on women versus women preying on men?
Okay,
women do
Kenan.
it
I mean,
too.
Poppy, Chulu. I'm Charlo.
All
Sorry.
of them.
Okay,
Yeah.
all three of y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, so what do you want to talk about, Cynthia? They were gonna even out the playing field.
He talking about the Cougars.
Okay, so what's wrong with the Cougars?
Well, just that in itself, right? Because you justify preying on young men as just being a cougar. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's not okay. I don't think it's okay for nobody to be
yeah,
no
we already
cougar.
know the current situation that we both spoke on or whatever the case
Oh, we
is.
gonna say it.
Who, Drea?
Drea.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like I'm like, yo, that's absolutely wrong. For one,
I
you older, you know better, and you
Yeah.
know that boy at that point in time, that man probably used to jack off to you back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To the point where now he finally can get what he's been imagining
Because
this
of
long
his
time.
money and status.
Because of his
It's
money
not
and
real.
status.
Yeah.
And she
Because
knows
if he
this.
didn't have that, she would not
She
look
wouldn't
at
be
him
checking
twice.
for him. She wouldn't be checking
Not at
that big
all.
old contract that boy just got. Like,
And
Let's
there's-
speak on
and there's
that.
older men in the NBA.
No.
and you've been with the older
So
man.
why not get the old man?
You've been with the older man.
Whoa, this
Let's speak on that. 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 All right, okay. Let's speak on that, right? And I kind of spoke on that earlier as well too, but let's touch back on it because this brother just brought it up as well too. So we do got to be able to look at both sides of the coin, right? Because yes, it's common for it to be, oh man, the man was predatory towards the young girl. He was 44, something whatever the case is, and he was seeking after young girls, whatever the case is. But we do know, we've coined the term cougars. A cougar, of course, is an older woman who still looks good, is still whatever the case is, still got it, whatever the case is, who prey on younger men. So it's a double standard, right? That we both got to hold both parties accountable. Now, as the one lady said as well too, the one girl, she said, it's still wrong. Yeah, just a man can prey on, an older man can prey on a younger girl and it still be wrong. And an older woman can prey on a younger man and it's wrong. I agree. However, you heard what I said earlier as well too. In our culture, and I don't know why it's like this. But in our culture, for as long as I've seen, we've always made it okay. We've always made it more socially acceptable for a young dude to be able to get women in general, just any women, girls, even from a young age, like, you could be a young boy, whatever the case is, who's your girlfriend, whatever the case is. So we've always made it more acceptable for men to be ready and willing at whatever age to speak to women. When it comes to older women, right, and younger men, we've coined the term cougars and MILFs, right? We hear the word MILF and we hear cougar, whatever the case is. And it's more socially acceptable for a woman to, in my personal opinion, right? We've seen how it's more socially acceptable for a woman, an older woman, to approach a younger man. And you see them speaking about Drea Michelle and Jalen Green, of course. So, of course, if you're not familiar, Drea Michelle is, I think, maybe older than me, 36, 37, whatever the case is. Instagram model, whatever the case is. She's already has kids, already dated a NFL player, whatever the case is, but now she's pregnant and in a relationship with a young Jalen Green who's in the NBA. He's no older than 25? He's 23, 24, 25. So people, of course, and I saw backlash on that as well. Two people have called that predatory and saying that's wrong, that's incorrect. You also heard the gentleman said as well, too, it's manipulative and it's predatory because you're taking advantage of the dude. They're even questioning because, she's only with him for his money and his status. Okay, cool. That's evident, of course, because women always want to be able to be taken care of financially, whatever the case is. So, of course, she's a young NBA player, 22. She's significantly older than him. They're calling it predatory. People are saying that's wrong. Correct. The point that I'm saying is that it's more socially acceptable, even in that kid's mind as well too. He's probably seeing nothing wrong with that because this is probably a woman that he's been admiring since he was a little younger, since he was in high school. Now, to be completely honest, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. For me personally, specifically in the situation of Jalen Green and the NBA player, the young NBA player, and Drea Michelle, the older lady. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you, bro. I tip my hat to him. I tip my hat to him because we all know Drea Michelle. Of course, I'll probably post a photo of her somewhere in here as well too. Drea Michelle is a very attractive woman. She still got it. I think she's my age, maybe a little bit older. She's a very attractive woman. So I know as a young homie right now, as a man, and I know a lot of men would agree with that as well too. Drea Michelle is fine. Let's call a spade a spade. So if I'm a young boy, if I'm finally in a position where I can actually get the woman of my dreams, let's just say if I'm Jalen Green, I'm in the NBA, I'm making buku bread, I got millions now, and I can actually obtain a Drea Michelle, I'm gonna go after that, bro. You know what I'm saying? So let's keep it a buck. But again, basically what I'm saying, the point I was trying to say as well too, in our society, we don't necessarily say it's predatory. Of course, we can call it out. Oh, no, that's still predatory. That's still wrong. But there's a demographic of people in our culture that would agree that man, congratulations. And people will justify it by saying, well, they're both of sound mind. They're both grown adults. They're both, whatever the case is, consenting people, stay out of their business. And people see nothing wrong with that. If the roles were switched, if it was an older man and a young woman, people get more backlash. So the point I'm trying to make is, in that situation, society has made it where it's socially unacceptable, right? Although we're saying, hear me out. Although we're saying both are unacceptable, right? Some people are saying it's predatory, the age is too old, whatever the case is. But in our society, we've made it more socially acceptable for it to be an older woman and a younger man versus an older man and a younger woman. Again, specifically that situation with the basketball player and Drea Michelle, hey. And I just told you that, you hear the word, cougars with a table. I just told you personally that I'm a fan of older women as well too at this age. Of course, I'm 35, granted, but of course, I'm not opposed to older women as well too. I get it. So the whole point of this conversation, right, basically to kind of drive it all in, what is the age range? What is the rule? If we can find a rule that kind of made both okay, are we basing it off of, is there a set number that we could say, like, okay, the gap can't be longer than 10 or more than 5 or whatever the case is, 10, whatever the case is? Are we basing it solely off of two consenting parties that are both of sound mind and sound body that have the, the cognizance to make rash decisions, responsible decisions, I should say? And I would think that would be the solution, in my personal opinion. I would think that would be the solution. I think, honestly, but how do you gauge that though, right? So how do you gauge, okay, you are smart enough and sound enough and can consent to being in a relationship with a party that's 10, 15 years older than you, right? Because in the situation before, when the girl was like, one was 22, she was 22, and the dude was 44, everybody would be like, hell nah, right? But in that time, you heard her saying as well too, well, she thought she was grown. The people her age weren't really doing it for her. She wasn't really looking at the 22-year-olds, the 23-year-olds, the 24-year-olds. So she thought she was doing herself a service by talking to somebody significantly older than her, right? And now she's saying, okay, looking back, she would never, recommend that, whatever the case is. Her mom was trying to avoid her from that, whatever the case is. All I'm trying to say is, I think we've known, again, going back to our older generations, our grandmas, our grandpas, our great-grandparents, whatever the case is, all of us know somebody right now who, whether it's our parents, our parents, whatever the case is, we know people who have significant gaps, and it worked, right? We have representation that you right now might be watching right now. You have a family member right now that's 10 years older than you, whatever the case, or your grandparents, whatever the case is, and it worked, right? In our current times right now, especially with this rise in, pedophilia and manipulation of younger children and abuse and this, that, and the other, it is something that has to be clearly defined as to what is right and what is wrong, right? So in my personal opinion, I think it's manipulative and it's predatory when the person's not all the way there. You're not fully developed. You're too young to even make a sound decision as to being in this relationship, right? But I think it's okay if, again, depending on the gap, whatever the case is, I think both parties, again, going back to what she said earlier, if I'm 30, if I'm a 45-year-old man and I'm talking to a 30-year-old woman, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You would agree. if I'm a 45-year-old man and I'm talking to a 30-year-old woman, nobody would say there's anything wrong with that. Why? Because both parties are of sound mind and sound body. Shit, if I'm a 30-year-old man and I'm talking to a 45-year-old woman, you would say there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing predatory about that. Why? Because both parties are of sound mind, right? Both parties are grown adults that can make rash decisions. Again, like what the other lady said, we've lived enough life to be able to make a sound decision knowing that that's completely okay, right? So in situations like that, that's the situation where both works out. If I'm 30 years old and I'm talking to a 45-year-old woman, nobody would have a problem with that. If I'm a 45-year-old man and I'm talking to a 30-year-old woman, nobody would have a problem with that. So basically what I'm saying, there is areas where it's acceptable, but we got to find the terms that make it acceptable. And I think it's predatory when you're lying. If I had to lie about my age, it's predatory, it's manipulative. If I'm significantly older and you're still young, you're still in high school, like we all know, again, regardless of how old you might feel, that, I'm 18, I'm 19, you don't know nothing. So it's predatory then. It's manipulative then. I think it's a no-no. So I would say, if I had to put an age limit, because again, sometimes it's not, and she brought up a good point as well too, sometimes it's not even about the age, because we all probably know somebody that's 45 that still acts like a kid. We know people like that. We know people that are not their age. Age doesn't necessarily mean wisdom. Age just means how many years you've been alive on this planet. So there's some people that are grown as hell but act like kids. And that's still a problem as well too. That doesn't make it any right. But you could be a 45-year-old and still have the mentality of a teenager, right? You see what I'm saying? So again, what are we basing it off of? So basically it sounds like we're saying having a gap is okay, but what is the age? What are we basing it off of? What is the criteria that makes the age gap okay? I want to hear your thoughts on this, man. What are your thoughts? Leave them down in the comment section for sure. I want to know, what do you think is the proper age of consent, right? What is the age where it's not manipulative? What is the age where it's okay? Again, taking all the things that I said into consideration, the generations before us, the dynamic between men and women, the levels of maturity, the age of development, the development of the brain. What do you think is a large gap? What is too large of a gap, or what makes it okay? If there is a gap of 10 years, 10 plus years, what is the gap that makes it? What is the criteria that makes that okay for both parties, men and women? For an older woman talking to a younger man, for an older man talking to a younger woman, what is the criteria that makes such a large gap okay? I want to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, the likes, the comments, the subscribes are all greatly appreciated. I will catch you on the next one.